that we have one member attending virtually, so I'll hand it off to our staff to go through that procedure.
Chair Melendez, I apologize. The vice chair is actually not logged on yet, so we'll let you know when he is.
Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed with the roll call.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn. Board Member Nunez.
Present.
Board Member Becker.
Present.
Board Member Spellich.
Here.
Chair Melendez.
Here. And it looks like we do have Vice Chair Garcia on.
Yes, I am here. I apologize, everyone, for not being able to be present today. I came down with something not fun. And to be cognizant and of it and not get anybody else sick, I decided to be remote today.
And I believe that complies with our remote participation policy.
Chair, if I can just ask the vice chair to state whether there is anyone in the room who is over the age of 18.
There's nobody over the age of 18.
Okay, thank you. Can you also just let the board know if you need to take a break and step out of the room for any reason?
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank
For
you.
the record. Sorry. Board Member Figueroa. Thank you.
Roll call was completed, and now we'll move on to any board comments and announcements. Anything from my board members to share? All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment at this time?
We do not have any public comment.
All right, now we will move to the approval of our last meeting's minutes. May I have a motion?
Move approval.
I'll second.
Thank you. Please vote.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn. Board Member Figueroa.
Approve.
Board Member Nunez.
Yes.
Board Member Becker.
Yes.
Board Member Spellich.
Yes.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Thank you. Now moving to our consent calendar. Do we have any public comments on consent calendar?
We do not.
All right. Now we may have a motion to approve consent calendar.
I just
I'll
have
move.
one comment. Okay.
Oh, yes, Member Becker.
I was just wanting to comment that I see on the consent is the setting the time and place for our board meetings. And I would hope that we could bring that back and discuss a little bit more about the moving this meeting to Carlsbad, where our home base is, our headquarters.
Sure. Yeah, I believe this item is for staff to continue to investigate a number of options, and
Very good.
we'll come back to the board for full consideration.
Very good. And I'll second that motion.
All right, please vote on the passing of the consent calendar.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn. Board Member Figueroa.
Aye.
Board Member Nunez.
Yes.
Board Member Becker.
Yes.
Board Member Spellich.
Yes.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Thank you. Now we will move over to our CEO, Greg Wade, for his update.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. The first item of business today is to introduce you to our new staff members, which is very exciting. You'll hear a little bit more about this in item number 6, the public hearing that's on our agenda today. So I'll ask each of them to stand up when I read their name, and you can see on the presentation there the title for each of these new employees. Anna Alarcon, our clerk to the board and executive assistant. Cara Villasenor, our programs analyst. Tiffany Reynolds, our key accounts analyst. Sophia Alcaraz, our energy contracts and compliance analyst. and Wu Yakubu, our Energy Analytics and Risk Manager. So it's, again, this was following a recruitment effort. And again, I'll go into a little more detail on item number 6, but we're excited to have them on board. And I can say that each of them have jumped right in and hit the ground running. So we're really excited to have them here. I know our existing staff is quite happy to have them here. So welcome them to CEA team. So moving on to our statistics, you can see here, and by the way, I think I've notified you that with the Oceanside and Vista full enrollment now, we are just going to focus on the territory as a whole with each member agency broken out. You can see that combined total at the bottom there, when you add up the 3 product offerings, we're now just about 255,000 customer accounts, 1,025 green impact customers and 738 clean impact customers. And I did want to update the board that at their June 17th council meeting, the Carlsbad City Council took action to opt up their municipal accounts to 100% green impact. So that's a notable movement on their behalf. That will add roughly over 200 or 450 customer accounts to their green impact champion list. So that's a welcome addition to that product offering. Staff has still been quite engaged with our communities. These are the events that we participated in since the last board meeting. I won't go over all of them. I think some board members here may have seen our staff out at a couple of these events. And the next scheduled event we have is the North County Health and Wellness Fair in Oceanside on August 14th. That doesn't mean that we will not continue to outreach and communicate with our customers before that time, but that's the next officially scheduled event. So an update on our 4 programs now. We have the the Solar Plus program, Solar Plus Connect, Battery Bonus program, and Battery Bonus Connect program. And as a reminder, the Connect is those applications that are income eligible, supported by Self-Generation Incentive Program or SGIP funds. And as you can see, we've had quite a bit of interest already. We've only launched this just about a week or 2 ago. And on the Solar Plus Connect side, Solar Plus Battery, we have 15 active applicants. On the Battery Bonus Connect, we have 25 applicants, and we're still working with other applicants on the Solar Plus, the original program offering. So you can see the breakdown there by community or member agency, and we are getting attraction in almost all of our member agencies. We also have launched our Peak Smart Savers program, and this, as a reminder, is a program where customers can get discounts on their energy bill most of the time, almost all of the time, except during when we have a peak demand event called, and we can call up to 18 of those per year. And during that time, there's an adder during the on-peak time of 4 to 9 p.m. And so this is the enrollment right now. We have customers enrolled from Del Mar, Escondido, and Oceanside and Vista, and that program is just underway. And that concludes the highlights of the CEO report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Greg. I'm really hopeful, looking forward to further applicants in the Solar Plus and Battery Bonus program. Just a couple dozen within the first week. I think that that's off to a good start. I think we want to, as an organization, keep talking about these programs. I know that we're looking forward to continuing partnership with our contractor to help us with communications for getting the word out about these programs. So really looking forward to that. Any comments or questions from the board? Member Figueroa?
Thank you. With the Peak Smart program, what is the goal? Do we have a specific goal as far as like a monthly objective?
At this point, this is a pilot program. So what we're doing is we're going to see how these event days present themselves when there's a high expected heat or demand event coming up. We are going to analyze how well our customers respond to that. I think one of the cool things about the program is basically we have a rebate program if after the end of the first year and a customer doesn't experience a rate or savings overall on their bill, they'll be credited back. So our objective here is to analyze how well this program works, how well customers respond to the called events to make sure that they are avoiding the peak hours during those events, and to see what kind of savings the customers can achieve during that event. So we're not doing a full press marketing effort on this as opposed to just getting the notice out to customers who were enrolled in a similar program in their prior bundled service. So that's our objective for this first year, is just to analyze it and see if it's a program worth continuing to pursue.
And Rebecca?
Yeah, how does that compare with, are we still tracking the people that are in that OHM?
Home Connect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that our program or is that SDG&E's program?
It's a partnership with Renew Home now, and they run that Home Connect program. So it's a partnership with them to basically, that's a demand response program where people are tracked on their certain their activity, and they can get credit for that and get things like smart thermostats and other instruments that can help them save energy. So it's it's just something we're monitoring. It's an active program that we have going continuously, but it's separate from the Peak Smart. Although Peak Smart, I mean, in combination, they can help a customer to achieve energy savings.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Greg. And I'd say we do have a number of programs. Some are newly launched, but it would be good to come back and review them. Is there a scheduled time where we would be reviewing some of these programs?
Well, we'll be reviewing the program on a monthly basis with the CEO report, just to keep you updated as to how well our enrollment's going. And as for the Peak Smart program, we'll continue to update you, but come back in a year's time to let you know how it performed and how much people were able to participate and save, and whether or not there was any reimbursement made.
Good, thank you. All right, no further discussion. We'll go ahead and move along to our first public hearing. This is a procedural item for many agencies to keep our compliance with AB 2561, status of vacancies, recruitment and retention efforts.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the, please open the public hearing.
At this time, we will open the public hearing. And do we have any speakers at this time?
We don't have any speakers.
Okay. Chair, members of the board, this is, as the chair announced, under AB 2561, public agencies are required to hold a public hearing annually to report on the past fiscal year's recruitment, vacancy recruitment, and retention efforts. We are required to hold this public hearing at least once per fiscal year prior to the adoption of the budget, which is following later on this agenda. And obviously, this is to hear from our employees as well as people in the public that have any comments on it. As I mentioned, we have filled 5 positions in the last fiscal year, 4 of which were newly created positions, and 1 of which was a replacement of an outgoing employee. I won't go through all of this, but those are the positions and the employees that I just introduced during the CEO report. So we're happy to have those positions filled. The recruitment effort was comprehensive with virtual interviews as well as panel interviews and final interviews after a short list. There's been very little turnover in our short existence of having full staff, with the exception of the 1 employee who went on to a different career path. So we are providing benefits to our employees that are attractive to keep employees here. And as the board may recall, for those of you who are present, we did adjust our retirement savings allocation earlier this year, which is seen as a benefit as well. So we've been successful in filling these positions, which is the good news, and we are looking forward to providing this report next year when we also have some positions that we are looking to fill. So our recommendation is to conduct this public hearing and take any testimony.
All right, with that, I'd ask if there's any comments from the board. Member Blackburn?
I can't pass this opportunity to say you hit a home run with taking Anna from our city hall.
That's right. We'll welcome recruitment from the wonderful city of Carlsbad anytime. And, this has been a very transparent process. We are very glad to have the staff that we do. Everybody is excellent, and I'm very excited to have the new folks on as well. And in this public hearing, we have the opportunity to disclose our process a little bit more and report on any of those vacancies, which retention looks pretty good. So I'm pretty pleased about that. Any other comments? All right, well, with that, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing and accept staff's recommendation.
I'll move. Second.
Thank you. Please vote.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn,
Aye.
Board Member Figueroa.
Aye.
Board Member Nunez,
Yes.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Spellich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to new business, a regulatory update from our partners with Keys and Fox.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just got permission to share, so we'll share that right now. There it is. Thank you. Chair Melendez, Vice Chair Garcia, members, good to see you all again. Wendell with Keys and Fox. The good news here is that I'm going to be brief and we can quickly get to the budget discussion. The bad news is there's not a lot of good news in this month's regulatory report. My apologies, Member Becker, with your request last time. Just mostly there are places where we need to continue to roll up our sleeves and work on some issues. The first place is going to be in the PCIA docket, that is R25-02-005. Earlier today, the Commission reached the final decision in that proceeding. It was considering reforms to the Resource Adequacy Market Price Benchmark, or the RAMPB. That value of capacity is added to the value of energy and the value of green energy in SDG&E's portfolio. It's then compared to the cost of that portfolio, and your customers pay the difference between those two values through their PCI rates. We supported many of the Commission's proposed changes to that benchmark. We opposed two of them. Unfortunately, they were both still adopted in the final decision. The first one expands the data set that is used to calculate the benchmark to include older transactions. That means that those older transactions will stay in the calculation of the benchmark for longer. As of right now, that would now include 2021 and 2022 transactions, which tended to be lower priced, meaning the value of capacity is lower. But as we move forward, 2023 and 2024 transactions will be now included in the benchmark for a longer period of time. So that could help temper PCI rate changes moving forward. More problematic in my view over the long term is the second bullet, where the decision decides that PCI rates and change in the methodology to set those rates are not general rates. That label matters because the law prohibits retroactive rate making for general rates. The biggest problem in this final decision is it doesn't really explain why the Commission sees PCI rates to not be general rates, meaning it can open a Pandora's box in terms of the Commission going back and revising PCI rates into the past. We don't think the Commission can do that. We think that's illegal. We said as much in our comments, but the Commission did not change its proposed decision between the proposed and final decision. In result here is PCI rates are going to increase compared to the status quo on account of this decision. Next steps in this case is we'll open a phase 2 to consider more comprehensive reforms to the PCIA rates and how they are set. It's not clear right now when that phase 2 is going to start. My best guess would be that the Commission wants to see how these rates are set over the next 12 months, and then we'll see this docket probably enter our regulatory update again, I would imagine, in the beginning of 2026. The other update I have is the other two decisions that we discussed during last month's regulatory update. In the 2022 ERA compliance case for SDG&E, the final decision could be read to suggest that CCAs can't review SDG&E's efforts to sell a substantial amount of excess RA capacity. We don't think that's what the commission was trying to do here, but now we need to roll up our sleeves and make sure that you all still have a venue to review those sales, because these sales impact your PCI rates and they also impact your ability to meet your RA obligations. So still some work to do on this issue. And then the commission earlier today did deny CalCCA's proposal for hourly transactability of RA capacity. That prevents a la carte capacity procurement and continues to require load-serving entities to purchase RA on a full monthly basis, as opposed to, say, for a few hours during a month when they need RA in order to meet their obligations. A disappointing result here as well, although the commission has said, look, we just need more time to study this. So hopefully this is something that the commission will take up again soon. It has the ability to save ratepayers lots of money. So again, not a ton of good news here in this month's regulatory update, but not all bad news, just mostly places where we need to continue to roll up our sleeves and keep working. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have any public comments on this?
No public comment.
Thank you. Definitely not great news. I appreciate the update. I'm definitely concerned about our continued requirement to purchase resource adequacy on a monthly basis. It really limits us in how we're able to fill in those gaps for those peak times and those weather extremes that we have come to be familiar with. Month to month, we do see significant differences in our resource adequacy needs. So, being able to break that up would have been really important for us in a cost savings measure and many other reasons. But I'm also very concerned about the decision that you first described. How do we move forward in fighting this decision to change the rates, especially retroactively where it doesn't apply to other types of rates? How do we move forward and fight that?
There's two things you can do. One, the CCAs can consider filing an application for rehearing of the commission's decision. That's something that I think you'd want to take up with counsel in terms of receiving legal advice from counsel on those issues. And then the second way to continue to push back against an indifference framework that you don't think is working would be in phase 2, where the CCAs and other parties have the ability to make more comprehensive proposals on how to fix these rates going forward in order to achieve a more fair indifference framework and one that is more easily predictable, so that it's easier for you all to get a sense of what your customers' rates are going to be, how you need to respond to those rates, and what your future revenues are going to be.
Yes, we definitely want that predictability for our customers. And what about advocacy groups like CalCCA, other groups? Are they active on this effort as well? And what are they saying?
Yeah, absolutely. CalCCA led the charge within rulemaking 25-0205. That's the rulemaking to revise the PCIA. I will say, as someone who closely participated in that advocacy, CalCCA left no stone unturned here in terms of trying to get a fair result. Things could have been much worse as a result of this docket, but still a disappointing result here, I think, in terms of whether CEA's customers are going to be paying fair PCI rates or not.
I'm sure my other board members might have questions, so I'll turn it over, but I might have a few more. Any other thoughts? I think my biggest glaring concern is how is this going to affect our customers? And maybe Tim can speak to that, maybe Greg can speak to that.
So the way that we'll see impacts to your customers will be in October of this year. Each year, San Diego Gas and Electric begins what's called the ERA forecast case. It was started last May 15th, and I previewed a little bit for you how that case will unfold. Essentially, the utility puts forward prepared testimony suggesting how rates are going to change, and then they update that testimony in October based on the most recent benchmarks and the most recent transactional and market data that the utility has seen so far. It's during that update, which we call the October update, where we will see this new RA MPB put in place, both to true up last year's rates, that's the retroactivity piece of this, and then also to forecast the difference amount for 2026. So that's where we're going to see most likely an increase to PCI rates, and then those rates would go into effect on January 1st. We don't quite yet know the extent to which PCI rates are going to move on account of this new RA market price benchmark. The reason why is that the commission largely kept the data that it used to come to its decisions and the data that are used to calculate these benchmarks confidential. The data were never made public for any party to the proceeding. The reason is that data is transactional data among the load serving entities. I think the commission is concerned about market manipulation if that data is made public. However, our position has been there are already processes in place through which the commission can make that data available to people like myself that sign non-disclosure agreements and can review the data and then advise from that point forward. It was a frustrating point that they didn't include that. But the bottom line to answer your question, and sorry for speaking so long, is simply we will know in October the impact, how big of an impact this will have.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, thanks, Tim. As he mentioned, the ERA forecast for 2026, already has been an initial filing, and in our analysis, what I've tried to convey to board members during briefings is that PCIAs in that initial briefing, or that initial filing rather, show PCIAs going up, but in most cases still negative. As you may recall, all our current vintages have negative PCIAs, so essentially a credit on their bills of varying degrees. The first filing would show those, all but one of the vintages, which is 2017, Solana Beach, would still be negative, just less so, and bundled rates going up for SDG&E. That is just the first filing. And as Tim mentioned, this RA decision, which was retroactive to 2025, will then have a revision, which they always do anyway. But our current analysis shows, as Tim just indicated, a much higher increase in the PCIAs across the board. So something to track. We always expect it to change, but this makes it change slightly more so. So still tracking that.
Thank you for your.
Chair, I did also want to add that part of what I included in this discussion was a legislative update, specifically to update the board on what's the Congressional Reconciliation Act at the congressional level in Washington, D.C. The reason I wanted to update the board and members of the public is as many people know, the House passed Resolution 1 that deals with this reconciliation bill has significant cutbacks or rollbacks rather in electric energy and EV tax rebates at the home specific level that would see both House, and I'll just summarize these bullet points in front of you, and the Senate versions would roll back those tax incentives for rooftop solar and EVs by the end of 2025. The Senate version's a little more gracious, giving 180 days after enactment in which those would roll off. Another impact to potentially our counterparties who are energy developers is that the investment tax credit, ITC, and the production tax credit, PTC, are in both the Senate Finance Committee's version of this bill as well as the House passed resolution phasing out those incentives. The Senate passed version phases them out a little more slowly over time, but we're looking at those rolling off potentially by the end of 2028. If depending on which version of this bill gets enacted into law. And also a restriction on foreign entities of concern. being part of a project, namely China and their equipment, materials, and those types of products that are commonly used for large-scale utility scale projects. Remains to be seen how this shakes out. The House passed resolution just doesn't allow any tax credits for participations by a foreign entity of concern, and the Senate's committee's initial draft would be a sort of a percentage-based reduction in whether or not you got a tax credit. So if you had 50% or more of materials coming from a foreign entity of concern for a project, then it would eliminate the project from consideration of a tax credit. There's a bunch of other things that are still being discussed. I guess if there's any good news, this is really specifically targeted to solar and wind utility scale projects. Storage projects seem to have escaped, as have geothermal projects, in terms of the benefits that may still be enjoyed by developers. And this is the Senate side. There on the personal level, rooftop solar for customers, we have discussed this with our partners that are engaged in our Solar Plus project. There are restrictions in both the Senate and the House passed version of the bill that would avoid or disallow any leasing of solar facilities. So that was kind of a common construct for solar companies to lease back systems. There is some expectation that the use of the word lease is specific, in as much as the partners we use take advantage of a different part of the tax code, which is a commercial part of the tax code. So our expectation that third-party arrangements like we have with our consultants would not be affected by this. But again, we're still waiting to see how that plays out. The Senate is looking to have their version of the bill completed and reconciled in conference with the House by July 4th. But as you may have heard, there's still quite a bit of disparate opinions on things like Medicaid and other provisions in the bill that are of concern. And also right now, the Senate parliamentarian is ruling on the process by which this is going through, which is the reconciliation process. Typically, budget bills like this require a 2/3 majority vote in the Senate. Reconciliation is a process by which you're only supposed to look at policy issues. The reconciliation is looking at costs, expenses, and the debt limits or debt levels that Congress has set. And the parliamentarian has already ruled that several provisions of the code do not pass the Byrd rule, which is a mechanism by which superfluous or non-specific to this budget bill items are not to be included. So a lot of moving parts. What this means is that potentially, should these tax credits be rolled back in the way that is currently anticipated, we may see some cost increases on utility scale projects. May not be as dramatic, but at least over the next several years, we'll be looking at that. And our counterparties, people in this industry, have already been anticipating these kinds of things. So again, more good news is that they've tried to figure this out ahead of time. But again, a lot of things going on. I just wanted the board to be aware that this is something we're watching closely.
Thank you, Greg. Any comments on the legislative update? Thank you.
I just wanted to wrap up by there are some measures being floated by members of the House. I put them up here. There's two alternative options to consider. Both, the first of which, 3291, is probably the second preference from our perspective, which is status quo, continue to have these tax incentives. HR 3291 is a little less, provides more latitude in terms of the rollbacks of those tax credits.
Great, thank you. Now we will proceed to item 8, adoption of our 2025-2026 budget. Andy, it's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, we'll look at the current forecast for the year, which ends next week or this next week, I guess. Although the actuals here are through, it says March 31, but it's actually April 30th. The forecast for the full year is 31.7 million, slightly better than the forecast we presented at the last meeting. April was slightly better than we had expected. There's still a lot to be figured out between May and June. We don't have May financials yet. But this is a $31.7 million positive change in that position as compared to the 33.3 million. Let's go to the following page, please, and I'll come back if necessary. The current forecast, as I mentioned, is net assets of 31.8 million, about 1.6 million dollars below budget. Although there are several likely positive upsides that still are, as I said, likely to happen that would make our outcome better. They're unknown yet, and it's sort of related to the October PCIA update that we've been paying SDG&E for renewable energy and for resource adequacy for the full year based upon an estimate that was made last October, and we pay throughout the year. And then in October they go back and tell us what it really was. So then we know what. And then if we overpaid, they credit it back, and we get a credit back on our annual report. But we won't know until close to the audit finish what the actual price does that we pay. As mentioned, the current forecast is to end with a positive $14.8 million of net position. That's great news after 3 successive negative years. Energy expenses are 6.9 million below budget. And revenues also were below budget. We've talked about that at the last meeting, although happy to revisit it. And the sum of all other expenses, which is less than 3% of our budget in total, are very close to budget. Any questions?
I'm just curious. I think worst case scenario, if this goes through the way the Republicans want it to go through, you're going to end up with a decimation of solar, battery, and EV sales. So how does that factor into your confidence that the forecast you've got? What point do you re-examine that and say, you know, we're starting to see some real traction in the wrong direction, and then we have to update? How does that work?
Predicting the future is, you're asking me to predict the future. However, which I'm not good at. However, the discussions at the federal level about the budget and budget reconciliation should have, in my opinion, not much impact on our budget. The expenses on the energy side are fairly locked in because we hedge our expenses for our energy costs about 80% on 1 year out. So most of our costs are already pretty locked in, and we know pretty closely what they'll be. Sometimes, as you can see, we're $7 million below budget for the year. That's $7 million on a $350 million budget, so still pretty close. But I don't think we're likely to be far off. Where it could have some impact in the long run is on the revenue side, which is what customers, not the rates that customers pay, because we're assuming that our rates are not going to change for at least the next few years. But in terms of customer usage, they could change if customers decide to stop putting so much solar in or using as much solar or whatever the reason is. However, you know, given that most customers already have solar, they're going to use solar as they have it, and therefore our revenues are probably not likely impacted as much either. Potentially in the budget and changes and the reconciliation stuff could have an impact on our financials in the foreseeable future, 3-4 years down the road. And it certainly will have an impact, or most likely will have an impact on the availability of us finding new long-term contracts for buying renewable energy, solar and wind contracts over the long haul.
And I guess one follow-up is there any, I'm going to ask a naive question, but with the impact on potentially battery sales going down, does that create any regulatory risk that, you had said focusing on trying to build up battery storage, both in large projects and in small? What could that mean, or is it inconsequential in terms of what residential was going to do anyway?
On the single family home side, say, or rooftop solar behind the meter side of the house, there could be a scaling back of people who are obviously investing in solar and batteries. What I'm, brief conversations I've had with, as I mentioned, some of our partners, they're preparing and have prepared for this by safe harboring, creating a safe harbor fund to allow projects to move forward regardless of what happens out of the federal budget discussions. So that's the good news on that side. I can't speak to the industry-wide impacts this might have. For better or for worse, California already has some of the highest, or does have the highest energy costs or electricity costs in the country. And so from a scalability or a payback standpoint, that payback is still relatively more quickly realized for customers in California by virtue of the high energy costs. On the utility scale side, again, both the House and Senate, the Senate Finance Committee and House version of the bill seem to have sort of pushed off solar into a different category, a commercial side category. So it looks as though large scale storage projects, which is really many of which we're focusing on right now in terms of generation plus storage to support us, don't appear to be subject to a lot of that, where we might have some cost increases or challenges with the foreign entities of concern. China has been a big player in the market on utility scale batteries. So how that all plays out, as I mentioned, counterparties and energy developers have been preparing for this, whether it be the tariff impacts, rollback of tax credits, that's been anticipated for some time. So to Andy, I agree with Andy. I don't see this dramatically impacting our budget. It won't impact our budget next year because we've already hedged for and accounted for most of our energy. The out years, we're gonna have to see how that plays out. But our hope is that it's not going to be a dramatic impact, but we will see some impacts.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. Any further questions? Go ahead, Andy.
Okay, next slide. Any questions on the forecast for the year? Okay. The next set of slides are on the proposed budget. These are roughly similar to last time. In fact, the budget we're proposing is unchanged from the last meeting. Change in that position, forecast of 35.9 million. That's 4.1 million better than the forecast for this year. We're assuming no change in rates for this current budget year, and also the 5-year projection in the numbers you'll see. And just as an FYI, CalCCA is projecting significant generation rate decreases over the next few years by SDG&E, although they're projecting that they might go up in the first year. At this point, we're assuming no change in our rates. We also are assuming there's no change in the demographics and load growth of our customers. Obviously, they'll change a little bit. We have customers coming in and coming out every period, and there's a general industry usage increase of about 1 to 2% on average of load growth over the years, although every territory is different. But we're assuming that we're not assuming any of that growth. We're just assuming customers and usage and mix is flat. As I mentioned last time, we're assuming a programs budget of $2 million in the upcoming budget. We are spending, and there was a question a little while ago about Renew Home and Home Connect. We have very, very small expenses that we're going to be looking at potentially putting into this category next year. But in terms of what we have expensed so far, it's immaterial and shown as zero at this point. But we're assuming going forward a growth of $2 to $12 million over the next 5 years. And Greg mentioned, one more. Staffing administration, we're 10 positions today. The budget is calling for 16 positions by the end of the fiscal year. It's assuming that we won't, we've assumed that we will add one soon that he'll talk about in a few minutes, and the other 5 in 6 to 8 months from now. And we haven't exactly figured out exactly what positions they are, but they are budgeted in there. Nick, any questions? Okay, next slide. We have for our energy costs, which is 97 or 96% of our expenses, we've assumed forward energy price forecasts. They appear to be continuing recent declines. So we're showing relatively flat expenses other than a contingency, which we talked about last time, and I'm happy to talk about more and touch on in a few minutes. Renewable energy prices have declined from recent highs, but remain above historical norms. There are signs that they continue to drop, but we'll continue to monitor those. And they went up dramatically and dramatically fast last year. So they're somewhat unpredictable. So that's one of the unpredictable parts of our budget that we do have a contingency to accommodate just in case that happens. And resource adequacy is another one that went up to historical highs very quickly last year that we suffered from some of those costs. But we have, again, they've been staying fairly tame lately. And that we're entering the summer period and they appear to be remaining tame. So we'll see if that continues. But as I said, they were highly volatile last year and we're trying to allow for a contingency in the event that they're highly volatile again. Just touching on the contingency one more time, we have proposed a 10% contingency in our budget. So we take total energy costs of all the components of buying energy, renewable energy costs, our resource adequacy, and we add those up and then apply a 10% contingency to that. That adds about $25 to $28 million a year over the next 5 years. I think it's $25 million next year in the current proposed budget. We used a portion of that contingency last year, which was 5%. The prices that are low, we had some discussion about contingency last time, so I just wanted to reiterate it. If we don't spend the contingency, it goes back into our general fund. We're just trying to anticipate the fact that prices can be quite volatile, and we're just trying to make sure that we have a budget that we can beat, and we're not surprised on the downside. It's great to be surprised on the upside, but not on the downside. Any questions about that? Okay. This slide, the column with the red arrow is our proposed budget. Again, it matches the column or the proposal last time. In fact, this whole slide matches the 5-year outlook from last time. We discussed days liquidity on hand. So this proposal and proposed budget would have us achieving approximately 81 days of liquidity on hand at the end of the fiscal year, June 2026, and growing to over 200 days in the 28, 29, 29, 30 period. The board is not approving the outlook, only the column that's with the red arrow, the budget. But it does give us a view into the future of where we think things will go, and gives us a timing of when we believe we can we have financial stability and also go out for a from a rating agency, an investment grade credit rating, which getting an investment grade credit rating is validation of financial stability of a utility that has almost $400 million in revenue. Questions? Okay, next slide. Oh.
Okay, we'll move to public comment.
There's no public comment on this item.
All right, then discussions. Comments. Well, I appreciate Member Spellis. She mentioned concerns about our long-term costs. And while we do have a lot of foresight to secure energy contracts in advance, right? We know that in the long term, the costs of these renewable resources could increase. We already include some level of non-renewables in our energy portfolio. But I am also concerned that in, coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that we could see an increase in the cost to renewable energy products. And the board has previously, we have increased rates previously, and that's put us in a position to be doing okay. So I would just be concerned with federal policies that increase the cost of renewable energy, that could come back to hurt our customers. So as much as I support the budget that's in front of us today, there are not significant changes from our previous review. There have been some higher level legislative changes that force us to have those conversations. So I appreciate that, Andy, being able to give us a really good outlook for 25, 26 and the next couple of years. But we're going to have to watch that closely to see if there's going to be increases.
If I could, just in response and getting back to Board Member Spelch's question, the Senate version of the Senate Finance Committee's version of the bill shows tax credits for storage and geothermal starting to be phased out in 2033 through 2036. So there is some time on that side. Again, we don't know where this is all going to land, but that's a hope for outcome of this, so that there's some delay on some of this. Beyond that, I think we've already responded to the rest of the comments, and happy to see that the current year budget is already looking a little more favorable.
Okay. I have one more comment, but is there any other member comments? All right. Well, Greg, I just wanted to follow up on one thing that we discussed at our last meeting, which was really about that cost recovery piece. We're an agency that is collecting revenue from people paying their utility bills. And there may be times where people are behind or become delinquent. And I'm understanding from our conversations that this represents a really small portion of our budget. So maybe you can speak to our agency's efforts to conduct that cost recovery. Overall, the enrollments have been doing really well. I don't think we're missing out on revenues from potential enrollments as much as far as I've evaluated, but maybe you can just speak to general cost recovery and delinquency.
Thank you, Chair. So we have done quite a bit of analysis into this, given the discussion at the last board meeting, and to underscore this, as you stated, this really represents a small portion of our budget. Understanding that the arrearage reports that we provide or are provided by Calpine represent sort of a snapshot in time. Also, when you look at those reports, whether it's a 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90, 90 to 120, there's overlap there. So you're seeing some customers that are counted, essentially double counted. But in our analysis, we've got the amount of customers that are in that list that are also enrolled in payment plans. So we have several payment plans, or SDG&E offers payment arrearage management plans and other plans that allow you to pay over time. They're captured in that list. So we've looked into that, and that accounts for approximately, I believe it was 27% of those are in payment plans, so we expect to be paid. Our own analysis showed that roughly 99% of all revenues are collected that we expect. And so while we do monitor these arrearages, they don't present a substantive, if even meaningful, impact to our overall budget. Obviously, we are helpful to customers who need to have help, who need to get enrolled in these programs. We point them in the right direction, and so on the one side, we try to support customers who need those concessions, and on the other, we also try to collect where a customer is able to pay. So I don't know if that That's just a high-level summary of some of the analysis we've done, but I don't know if Andy, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to analyze that. I know it was a previous question. I want us to make sure that all of our questions, we're able to have researched and be able to be thoughtful. Member Becker?
Yes, I just wanted to say thanks for analyzing that as well, and thanks for the budget update. And I guess, we're just going to have to take it year by year and look at this. There's an election in 1 year and 5 months, so hopefully we can hang on and maybe there could be some changes. I know our U.S. Congressman Mike Levin could be really helpful in hopefully, changing things if things go our way in 1 year and in 5 months. But so I am appreciative of also adding that legislative piece to our agenda so that we might, have, I don't think we have a lobbyist right now, but we might be able to work with someone that could be helpful if the time is right and that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it and happy to see for this we're in the green for the first time, so that's exciting. So let's just take it for that. So thank you so
Yes.
much.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments. Member Nunez.
Thank you, Chair. Just to piggyback on Board Member Becker's comments, I will add that in San Marcos, we're represented by Congressman Peters. So I think that's another ally that we may have in continuing to advocate on behalf of our residents and looking for other opportunities that we may have.
Very good. Thank you for those comments. And to continue this budget, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this budget.
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments? All right, please proceed with the vote.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn?
Aye.
Board Member Figueroa?
Aye.
Board Member Nunez?
Yes.
Board Member Becker?
Yes.
Board Member Spellich?
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia?
Yes.
Chair Melendez?
Yes. Thank you for the passage of that budget. Now we will move on to our final item, work plan approval, position amendments, and salary schedule amendments. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. So this item is to approve the final work plan for the next 2 years, fiscal years 26 through 27. As you've seen in past meetings, the work plan is built on the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. It includes implementation measures and key performance indicators to track progress of implementing that strategic plan. We also try to identify funding sources for those measures and the staff or consultant responsibility for carrying out those items in the work plan. This, of course, has been put together in consideration of the budget and where we can prioritize the expenditures of discretionary funds when the board chooses to do so. But it also provides staff with a clear picture of what projects and programs to implement. The next item on this, or the next request on this item is to approve an amendment to both our position control listing as well as our salary schedule. You can see here that we are recommending the addition of 2 positions to the position control listing right away, one of which is an executive assistant office manager position to supplement and provide redundancy for backfill of executive assistant responsibilities. We did a recruitment recently and we have highly qualified candidates for that position. The next is to create a senior procurement manager position. As you were just introduced, we now have a manager in that division, and to keep the structural integrity of our staffing in place, we want to create that position. That would not create an additional position, but would be a lateral transfer for that position. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the executive assistant office manager would essentially take the place of the administrative clerk position that was already authorized by this board. It's the same general budget impact. It's been factored into the budget. And as I just went through, the senior power procurement manager would be filled by an existing staff member. So no increase to that budget item for that change. We would be coming back to you, of course, in the next fiscal year with proposed amendments to the position control listing and the salary schedule when we identify the staffing needs that were presented in the budget. So we're requesting that 3 resolutions be approved by the board. Oops, sorry. 2025-027, 028, and 029, which approve the work plan, the position control listing amendment, and the salary schedule amendment, respectively. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Greg, do we have any public comments on this item?
We don't have any public comment on this item.
All right. From the board. Yes.
I'm going to just explain why I'm going to abstain
Sure.
is because I don't understand, because I'm a substitute. I don't understand the inner workings. And I'm looking at things like an executive assistant making as much as $164,000. I don't personally understand that. So I'm going to abstain and leave it to the members who understand the process better.
Certainly, yes. The title of some of these positions have been adapted from current roles. And so we are reflecting those changes in responsibility largely. And then also the work plan, really setting us up for 25, 27 continued activity within the agency. Member Spellich, do you have a comment? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommended resolutions.
I'll second.
Did someone want to make the motion first? Or you just want to?
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll go ahead and second that motion. All right, go ahead and vote.
Alternate Board Member Blackburn,
Abstain.
Board Member Figueroa, Board Member Nunez,
Yes.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Spellich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Aye. Thank you for that. And then now we will move forward to any requests for future agenda items. Any updates? Other items? All right. Seeing none, our next meeting will be tentatively scheduled for here in the city of Oceanside on July 31st. And everyone have a wonderful and happy 4th of July. And we are adjourned.